Hey everyone, and welcome to the show. Have you ever imagined feeling like you're just functioning at your absolute best? Sharper, calmer, more in tune with yourself.
Yeah.
That's the kind of transformation that some people are saying they're experiencing with microdosing. And that's what we're going to be diving into today with the self-help book, Microdosing for Health and Healing. If you're interested in picking up a copy, you can find the Amazon link in the episode description.
Mhm.
And while you're at it, don't forget to like and subscribe.
Ah.
So this book really kind of challenges, I think, the preconceived notions that a lot of us might have about psychedelics.
Yeah.
It's not about, these intense trips or altered states.
Right.
It's about harnessing the power of these substances in a way that's really subtle, almost invisible,
Yeah.
to unlock greater well-being potentially.
Yeah. Okay, so let's unpack this a little bit. This book was co-written by James Fadiman, who's often called the father of modern microdosing, and Jordan Gruber, a former attorney and writer. Yeah, and it's interesting because, Fadiman has lived a very conventional life, right? Like, he's been married for decades, he's a father, he's a professor,
Right.
and it really does challenge, the stereotype of who might be interested in psychedelics.
Yeah, exactly. It makes you realize that this is something that can really resonate with, people from all walks of life. So in this deep dive, we're going to be exploring the core concepts of microdosing, what it is, what it isn't, and we'll cover some of those safety and legal considerations that you need to be aware of. We'll also, kind of delve into the science behind it all, and we'll share some stories from real people who have, integrated microdosing into their lives.
Yeah, and it's also important to note that we'll be looking at a range of conditions where microdosing has, shown potential.
Hmm.
Like everything from ADHD and depression to long COVID and chronic pain.
Exactly. So much to cover.
Mm.
But, first things first, what exactly is microdosing?
Well, microdosing involves taking a very small amount of a psychedelic substance, typically LSD or psilocybin mushrooms.
Okay.
But we're talking about a subthreshold dose, so that means that it's below the level that would cause any noticeable psychedelic effects.
Hallucinations.
Yeah, exactly. Like hallucinations, you wouldn't feel high or trippy.
So no unicorns galloping through your living room.
Exactly. The goal is to experience subtle but noticeable improvements in your day-to-day life. So maybe you feel a bit more focused, maybe a bit more creative, or maybe your mood is just slightly elevated.
So it's like giving your system a gentle nudge in a positive direction.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Some people describe it as feeling like the best version of themselves.
I love that. Now, I know some people are probably curious about other substances used in microdosing. Can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, of course. So while LSD and psilocybin are the most common, some people do experiment with things like Amanita muscaria or San Pedro cactus. But it's really crucial to remember that, the legal status of all these substances varies widely, and it's really important to research the laws in your specific location.
Right. Safety and legality first. Right.
Mhm.
But getting back to the dosage, how much are we actually talking about when we say microdosing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So finding the right dose, your sweet spot is crucial, and it's very, very individual. It often depends on the substance, your own body chemistry, even just what you're hoping to achieve. It's generally recommended to start with a very, very low dose. So about 1/10 to 1/20th of a recreational dose. And then you gradually increase it until you kind of find what works best for you.
So start low and slow
Hmm.
is the mantra here.
Absolutely. It's always better to err on the side of caution.
Yeah, that makes sense. So speaking of caution, let's talk about safety. What are some of the long-term effects that people should be aware of?
Hmm.
I think that's a question that a lot of people have. Are there any risks involved?
Yeah, I mean, there are some potential risks, just like with any substance or practice that, affects your brain chemistry. One concern is the possibility of accidental overdoses, although this is quite rare with microdosing, especially with substances like LSD and psilocybin.
But still something to be aware of, right?
Yeah.
That what should someone do if they, think they've taken too much?
Yeah, in that case, it's always best to err on the side of caution and seek medical attention, if you're concerned. It's also important to be aware of potential interactions with other medications. So if you're taking, any prescription drugs, it's definitely a good idea to talk to your doctor before trying microdosing.
Right. Makes sense. Now, I know some people might be skeptical and they might think, isn't this all just the placebo effect?
Mm.
Could it be that people are just expecting to feel better, so they do?
Yeah, the role of the placebo effect is definitely a hot topic in the microdosing world, but research is starting to show that it might not be the whole story.
Recent studies have found that like microdosers often experience benefits that they weren't even anticipating,
Really?
like improved sleep or reduced inflammation.
Wow. So it's doing more than just tricking our minds into feeling better. Like there are actual changes happening.
Exactly. There's a growing body of research suggesting that even these like tiny doses can actually impact our brains and bodies in really profound ways. One key area is neuroplasticity.
Oh, okay.
So that's the brain's ability to like rewire itself and form new connections.
So microdosing could be helping our brains become more adaptable and flexible.
Yeah, that's the idea. And some research also suggests that, psychedelics, even in those microdoses, might have anti-inflammatory effects,
Interesting.
which could explain some of the reported benefits for conditions like, chronic pain. That's incredible.
Huh?
It sounds like there's a lot more going on than like meets the eye. So let's dive into, some specific conditions where microdosing is showing promise. One that I know a lot of people are curious about is ADHD. How is microdosing being used to help people with this condition?
Yeah, there's a growing body of anecdotal evidence and some preliminary research suggesting that microdosing might help people, manage their ADHD symptoms. People are reporting things like improvements in their focus and concentration, even their ability to like regulate their emotions.
And that's especially interesting because a lot of people with ADHD rely on medications like Adderall, which can have side effects.
Mm.
Could microdosing offer like a potential alternative?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a question that researchers are exploring, and it's too early to say for sure.
Okay.
But the initial reports are pretty promising.
Okay.
And it's not just ADHD, we're also seeing positive results with depression.
Yeah, I've heard some really moving stories from people who've struggled with depression for years.
Yeah.
I've found like a sense of relief and even hope through microdosing.
Yeah, absolutely. People describe like a lift in their mood, like a renewed sense of motivation and a greater ability to like connect with others. Some even talk about feeling like, their true selves again after years of just feeling lost in like the fog of depression,
Right.
you know?
That's really powerful. It's like microdosing is giving them back a part of themselves that they thought was gone.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just mental health conditions either. We're also seeing incredible results with long COVID.
Really?
Yeah, people who haven't like found relief through conventional treatments are reporting significant improvements in their like energy levels, cognitive function, even their ability to breathe more easily.
Wow. That's remarkable. So it's like microdosing is helping their bodies to like kickstart the healing process in a way that nothing else has been able to do.
Yeah, it really is quite extraordinary. And we're seeing similar results with chronic pain.
Mm.
People who are dealing with conditions like fibromyalgia, arthritis, even chronic headaches are finding relief through microdosing.
Yeah.
Imagine finding a way to like manage your pain without, having to rely on strong medications and all of their potential side effects.
That would be life-changing for so many people. But before we get like too carried away with all the potential benefits, let's take a moment to acknowledge, the ethical dimension of this conversation.
Yeah, that's a really crucial point. It's important to recognize and respect the, long-standing traditions of indigenous cultures who have been using psychedelics for centuries, often in ceremonial and spiritual contexts.
So how do we, kind of navigate the modern microdosing movement with like sensitivity and respect for these traditions?
Well, we need to be mindful of the potential for things like cultural appropriation and exploitation. We need to ensure that indigenous communities are consulted and, benefit from this growing interest in psychedelics.
Right.
It's also essential to, use respectful language and avoid like framing microdosing as a quick fix or a cure-all.
Right. It's about approaching this with humility and a willingness to learn, from those who have come before us.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here? What does the future hold for microdosing?
Well, the popularity of microdosing is definitely on the rise, and it's, unlikely to fade away anytime soon. We're seeing increased media coverage, more open conversations, and a growing demand for research and information.
And some are even predicting the emergence of like microdosing churches.
Yeah, that's right. The idea of like organized communities, kind of centered around microdosing is gaining traction. It really speaks to the potential for, microdosing to become more integrated into mainstream culture, potentially even as like part of, spiritual exploration.
Wow, that's a fascinating thought. It'll be interesting to see how it all unfolds.
Mhm.
But for now, let's recap some key takeaways from what we've discussed so far.
Yeah, okay.
First and foremost, Remember that microdosing is about those, subtle, gradual improvements, not about getting high or having, a psychedelic experience. It's about, like, potentially enhancing your everyday life.
Hmm.
And it's about being, smart and safe. Start low, research thoroughly, and, talk to your doctor if you have any concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. What are like some of the things that have stood out to you so far? What, piqued your interest? One thing that really struck me was like the potential for microdosing to really help people reclaim their lives, from these chronic conditions. Like
Wow.
the stories from, long COVID and chronic pain sufferers are just, they're so powerful.
Absolutely. And it makes you wonder if, microdosing could be part of like a larger shift in how we view health and healing,
Yeah.
kind of moving away from this one-size-fits-all model to something that's more personalized,
Right.
where, individuals are empowered to kind of find what works best for them.
I think that's a key takeaway from this book. It
Yeah.
encourages us to be curious, to explore different possibilities, and to really listen to our own bodies.
It's about taking ownership of our well-being and recognizing that there's, no single path to healing.
Exactly. And it's also about recognizing that, interconnection between mind and body.
Yeah.
And, that's where the concept of set and setting comes in, which the authors really emphasize as being crucial for, a positive microdosing experience.
Okay, I've heard that term before, but could you, explain it for our listeners who might be new to this?
Yeah, of course. So set refers to your mindset going into the experience.
Okay.
So, are you feeling anxious, stressed, hopeful? Your mindset can really significantly influence how you respond to the microdose.
So it's not just about, like, the substance itself, but about, like, the internal landscape that you're kind of bringing to the experience.
Exactly. And then there's setting that's, like the physical environment,
Okay.
the people you're surrounded by. Ideally, you want to be in a place that's safe, comfortable, supportive, where you just feel relaxed and at ease.
So it's not about just, like, popping a tiny pill and hoping for the best. It's
Yeah.
about, like, creating an intentional space that really, like, supports your well-being.
Precisely. It's about approaching microdosing with a sense of, reverence and respect. And, this kind of brings us to another important aspect, which is integration. It's not enough to just, have these microdosing experiences. You need to kind of weave those insights and benefits into your everyday life.
So it's about taking those subtle shifts in perception, mood, energy, whatever, and, like, making them last.
Exactly. Integration is about making those changes stick. It might involve things like, journaling about your experiences, meditating, talking to a therapist, or even just being more mindful of like your thoughts and behaviors.
So it's like microdosing is planting a seed, but it's up to you to, like, nurture that seed and help it grow.
That's a beautiful analogy. And, that's where practices like mindfulness, journaling, or even therapy can be really helpful because they provide that like framework for, processing your experiences and making those, subtle shifts more conscious and lasting.
So it's about, like, integrating microdosing into, like, a holistic approach to well-being.
Right.
Mind, body, spirit, all working together.
Exactly. And it's also important to remember that this isn't like a one-size-fits-all approach, right?
Yeah.
The integration process is going to look different for everyone, and it's really about finding what works best for you.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now let's talk about, like, some of the specific benefits that people are, experiencing with microdosing. We've talked about, like, mood and focus and, creativity. But what are some other areas where people are kind of seeing positive changes?
Well, one area that's getting a lot of attention is the potential for microdosing to kind of enhance emotional regulation. Okay. So people are reporting things like feeling more emotionally balanced, less reactive to stress, and, better equipped to just like navigate challenging situations.
So it's helping them to kind of develop, like, greater emotional resilience.
That's a great way to put it. And often, this increased emotional awareness kind of translates into improvements in relationships.
Okay.
People report feeling more empathy and compassion for others and, being able to connect on a deeper level.
So it's not just about, like, individual well-being. It's about fostering, like, healthier and more fulfilling relationships as well.
Absolutely. It's about creating this kind of like ripple effect of positive change that extends outward into our relationships and communities.
Love that. Now, what about energy levels? Because I've heard some people say that, like, microdosing gives them more energy.
Yeah.
And then others say they feel more calm and grounded. So how do we, like, make sense of these seemingly contradictory experiences?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, The effects on energy levels can really vary, depending on the individual, the substance used, and even the
Hmm.
dosage.
Okay.
Some people do experience an increase in like physical energy and motivation,
Yeah.
while others describe like a shift in their mental or emotional energy, like a sense of calmness or clarity.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all experience.
No, not at all.
Oh,
It's about finding, the right dose and the substance that aligns with like your unique needs. And it's also important to remember that, microdosing isn't a replacement for like healthy lifestyle choices,
right.
like getting enough sleep, exercising, eating a balanced diet. It's about integrating microdosing into like a holistic approach to well-being.
Makes sense. Now let's talk about creativity, because that's, an area where microdosing has gotten a lot of attention,
Yeah.
particularly, in fields like tech and art.
Mm-hmm.
So what's like the connection between microdosing and creativity from a scientific perspective?
Well, research suggests that psychedelics, even in microdoses, can enhance cognitive flexibility and divergent thinking.
Okay, can you break down those terms for our listeners?
Yeah, so like cognitive flexibility is basically the ability to kind of shift between different perspectives
Okay.
and adapt to changing situations. And then divergent thinking is the ability to generate like multiple ideas and solutions to a problem, like, thinking outside the box.
So microdosing could be helping us like break free from those like rigid thought patterns and kind of explore new possibilities.
That's the idea. It's about tapping into this like more fluid and expansive way of
I
thinking,
like that.
which can be really beneficial for creative pursuit.
Right. It's like giving our brains permission to play and explore.
Yeah.
Now let's address like the elephant in the room, legality. We touched on this a little bit earlier, but it's a topic that deserves, further exploration. So what's like the current legal landscape surrounding microdosing?
Well, unfortunately, the legal status of psychedelics varies widely around the world. In most countries, substances like LSD and psilocybin mushrooms are still classified as, illegal drugs. However, there's a growing movement to like decriminalize and even legalize these substances, for therapeutic and personal use.
Yeah, it's a really complex issue, and it's definitely important for our listeners to be aware of, like, the laws in their specific location.
Yeah.
But even in places where, psychedelics are decriminalized, there might still be like restrictions on, possession, distribution, and use.
Yeah, that's a really important point. Staying informed and making responsible choices is absolutely crucial.
Absolutely. Speaking of responsible choices, let's talk about sourcing.
Hmm.
So if someone's interested in microdosing, like, where do they begin to even find these substances?
Well, that's a question that requires, really careful consideration. In some places, there are legal channels for obtaining like psychedelic substances, maybe for research purposes or therapeutic purposes. But in a lot of cases, people turn to like underground networks or online sources.
And that can be kind of risky, right? Like, you don't
Yeah,
always know what you're getting.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's really crucial to be discerning, do your research, and be aware of like the potential for scams or, adulterated substances.
Right. And what about like sourcing from nature? I know some people are interested in like foraging for mushrooms, for example.
Yeah, that can be incredibly risky, especially with mushrooms. It requires like expert knowledge and identification skills to avoid potentially harmful or even deadly mistakes.
Oh, wow. So yeah, safety first, always.
Always.
Okay, so while we've been focusing on like the potential benefits of microdosing, it's crucial to acknowledge that there can be downsides too.
Mm.
This isn't like a magic bullet, and it's not for everyone.
You're absolutely right. While a lot of people report positive experiences, it's really important to be aware of like the potential challenges as well. One common concern is the possibility of experiencing, unwanted side effects.
Even with low doses.
Yeah, even with low doses.
Why?
These can include things like anxiety, headaches, maybe digestive issues. It's really important to like listen to your body and adjust your dosage or protocol accordingly.
And for some people, microdosing might not be suitable at all, right?
Right.
We talked earlier about those with like, predisposition to mental health conditions.
Mhm.
But are there like other situations where it's not recommended?
Yeah, individuals with certain medical conditions, especially those affecting the heart or liver, they should exercise extreme caution
Okay.
and consult with, a healthcare professional before even considering microdosing.
Hmm.
And of course, pregnancy and breastfeeding are also times when, microdosing is generally not recommended.
Right. It's all about prioritizing safety. Now, another potential challenge is like the impact on sleep. Some people say that microdosing like helps them sleep better, while others experience, disruptions. So how do we explain that?
Yeah, the effects on sleep can really vary, depending on the individual, the substance used, even the timing of the dose. Some people find that like microdosing in the morning actually leads to better sleep later that night, while others might experience like insomnia or, vivid
So it's
dreams.
about paying attention to your individual response and like adjusting accordingly.
Exactly. Experimentation and self-awareness are really key. And if you're experiencing like persistent sleep disruptions, it's always wise to, consult with a healthcare professional.
Makes sense. Now let's talk about tolerance,
Hmm.
because we know that with, regular use of psychedelics, you can build up a tolerance,
Right.
meaning you need like higher doses to achieve the same effects. So does that apply to microdosing as well?
Well, that's a question that researchers are still exploring, and the evidence is kind of mixed. Some studies suggest that, like, microdosing, especially with regular days off, might not lead to significant tolerance buildup. However, it's still a possibility.
Okay.
And it's important to be mindful of, your usage patterns.
So even with microdosing, it's not about like taking it every single day.
No.
Like those breaks are crucial.
Absolutely. Incorporating, regular days or even weeks off into your like microdosing protocol can really help to mitigate that risk of tolerance and just ensure that, the practice remains sustainable and beneficial.
So let's dive back into some specific conditions where, microdosing is showing promise. We talked about ADHD, depression, but, let's explore some other areas.
Okay. Yeah.
So one condition that's getting a lot of attention is long COVID. We're hearing from people who are like struggling with debilitating long COVID symptoms, things like fatigue, brain fog, shortness of breath, and they're finding relief through microdosing.
Yeah.
It's like, it seems like microdosing is helping to kind of rebalance their systems and support the body's like natural healing processes.
Right. Exactly. It's giving hope to those people who've kind of felt like lost and hopeless in their, search for relief.
That's incredible. It offers so much hope for, those who have felt lost. Another area with promising, like anecdotal reports, is chronic pain. People who are dealing with conditions like fibromyalgia, arthritis, and even migraines are, sharing their experiences of finding pain relief through microdosing.
Yeah, and it's almost like microdosing is helping to like interrupt those pain signals and rewire like the brain's perception of pain.
That's a fascinating possibility. And this is an area that like desperately needs more research because, traditional pain management approaches often come with a whole host of side effects and limitations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now let's talk about women's health. There's growing interest in microdosing's potential to address, conditions like PMDD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder. So what are we learning from women who, kind of incorporate microdosing into their menstrual cycles?
Yeah, we're hearing some amazing stories from women who've like really struggled with debilitating PMDD symptoms, things like severe mood swings, irritability, anxiety, even suicidal thoughts. Some describe microdosing as like life-changing. They report a significant reduction in their symptoms and this new sense of control over their cycles.
It's so empowering. It's like microdosing is giving them back that sense of like agency and ownership over their bodies and their well-being.
Yeah, it really is remarkable. And this is just one example of how, microdosing is being explored to kind of address, women's unique health challenges. There's like growing interest in its potential to help with things like menopause and postpartum depression too.
Yeah, it's like opening up like this whole new frontier in women's health and well-being.
Yeah,
Kind of moving beyond those like limitations of the more traditional approaches.
absolutely.
Now, let's talk about like the potential impact of microdosing on addiction, because there's like anecdotal evidence suggesting it might actually help people overcome, addictions like the alcohol, nicotine, even opioids.
Yeah.
So what's like the science behind that connection?
Yeah, well, while research in this area is still, pretty limited, there are a few kind of key mechanisms that might explain how microdosing could, support addiction recovery. First, psychedelics, even in microdoses, can increase neuroplasticity. So potentially that could help to like rewire the brain's reward pathways and reduce cravings.
So it's like microdosing is helping to break those like, deeply ingrained patterns of addiction and kind of create new healthier neural pathways.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. And second, microdosing can enhance, self-awareness and emotional regulation,
Hmm.
which can be really crucial in addressing the underlying emotional and psychological factors that often contribute to addiction.
Right. It's about getting to the root of the problem,
Yeah.
kind of understanding the why behind the addiction,
Yeah.
and empowering those individuals to make those lasting changes.
Exactly. And that's where, the integration work becomes so essential. Therapy, support groups, lifestyle changes, all of these things kind of contribute to that holistic framework for recovery.
Yeah, for sure. Now let's delve a little bit deeper into the science behind microdosing.
Okay.
We've mentioned, neuroplasticity, but what other key mechanisms are at play?
Well, one area that's gaining a lot of attention is the role of the default mode network, or DMN.
I have to admit I'm not familiar with that term. Can you explain it for our listeners?
Yeah, of course. So imagine your brain as this bustling city with different neighborhoods.
Okay.
The default mode network is kind of like the downtown area. It's active when your mind is wandering, daydreaming, or lost in thought. It's associated with our sense of self, our memories, and, planning for the future.
So it's like the chatterbox of our brains, constantly replaying the past or worrying about the future.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Research suggests that psychedelics, even in microdoses, can temporarily kind of quiet down the DMN,
Interesting.
allowing for a greater sense of, presence and connection, and even a reduction in negative self-talk.
So it's like microdosing gives our brains a break from all that mental chatter
Yeah.
and allows us to kind of experience the world with fresh eyes.
Beautifully put. And this shift in brain activity might also explain some of the other benefits of microdosing,
Yeah.
like increased creativity and reduced anxiety.
So it's like accessing a different mode of being, like a state of greater awareness and openness.
Exactly. It's a fascinating area of research, and as we learn more about the interplay between microdosing and the brain, we'll likely gain even deeper insights into its potential benefits and applications.
For sure. Now, let's address the question of placebo, because, some skeptics might argue that, the positive effects that people report from microdosing are simply due to, the power of suggestion. So how do we kind of respond to that criticism?
Well, it's a valid question, and researchers are actively exploring, that interplay between placebo and, the pharmacological effects of microdosing. While placebo definitely plays a role in, any healing modality, evidence suggests that microdosing is doing more than just tricking our minds.
So it's not just about, the power of belief. There are actual, physiological changes happening.
Right, exactly. Studies show that microdosing can actually lead to measurable changes in brain activity, neurotransmitter levels, and even inflammatory markers.
So there's a real biological basis for the benefits that people are experiencing.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that, even if placebo is involved, it doesn't diminish the value of those positive effects. Harnessing the power of the placebo effect is a valid and valuable tool in healing.
Right. It's about recognizing that intricate connection between mind and body
Yeah,
and embracing all the factors that contribute to well-being.
absolutely. Now let's talk about the practical side of microdosing. Where does someone even begin if they're curious about trying it out?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've talked about, the importance of researching legality and sourcing,
Mm-hmm.
but what about the actual process? What are some key things to keep in mind?
Well, the first and most important principle is, start low and slow.
Okay.
Begin with a very small dose and gradually increase it, until you find what we call your sweet spot. So that's the dosage that provides, noticeable benefits without overwhelming or disruptive effects.
And finding that sweet spot can vary from person to person.
Oh. Yeah, absolutely. It's about paying attention to your individual response.
Yeah.
It's also crucial to choose a reputable source, for your microdosing substance.
Mm-hmm.
Safety and quality should always be top priorities.
Yeah, and if someone's unsure about sourcing, it's always a good idea to consult with a trusted healthcare professional
Yes.
or even a microdosing coach,
Yeah,
someone who can kind of offer some guidance there.
that's a great suggestion. Now let's talk about, protocols. So the different ways that people approach microdosing.
Okay.
What are some of the common approaches out there?
Well, I've heard about the Fadiman protocol.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain that one?
Yeah, so the Fadiman protocol, developed by Dr. James Fadiman, is one of the most, popular and well-researched microdosing protocols.
Okay.
It involves taking a microdose every third day.
Okay.
So, like, allowing for 2 days off between doses.
And those days off are crucial for, like, preventing tolerance buildups, right?
Exactly. The Fadiman protocol was designed to kind of like minimize that risk of tolerance
Okay.
while still providing consistent benefit.
So it's about finding that balance between, like, consistency, but also giving your body, like, a break.
Exactly. And there are like other protocols out there. There's the Stamets stack, which combines microdoses of psilocybin with lion's mane mushroom and niacin,
Oh, wow.
which are believed to have like synergistic effects on, cognitive function, neurogenesis. And then there are also protocols that are tailored for like specific conditions,
Okay.
like chronic pain or PMDD.
So it's about exploring, different options and finding, like, what resonates with your individual needs.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Remember, protocols are just guidelines, and you might need to adjust them, based on your own personal response and experiences.
Okay, so let's revisit the importance of integration. We've touched upon this before, but it's a crucial aspect of microdosing that really deserves further exploration. So, what does it really mean to integrate the microdosing experience into, like, our everyday lives?
Well, integration is about like taking the insights and awareness,
Hmm.
the shifts in perspective that we gain from microdosing
Yeah.
and weaving them into like our everyday routines. It's about making, those changes to our habits, our behaviors, even our thought patterns, stick.
So it's not just about, like, those microdosing days. It's about carrying those benefits into, the rest of our lives.
Precisely. Microdosing can be this like catalyst for personal growth and transformation, but it's really up to each individual to, integrate those shifts and make them last.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's where, like, practices like journaling, meditation, or even therapy can play a significant role, right?
Absolutely. These practices offer like a framework for, processing our experiences, gaining deeper insights, and turning those, subtle shifts into like concrete positive changes.
So it's about weaving microdosing into, like, this holistic approach to well-being,
Right.
mind, body, and spirit working in harmony.
Exactly. It's about, creating a synergy between, various practices and modalities that support, our overall well-being.
Love it. Now let's turn our attention to some potential risks associated with microdosing. While we've highlighted a lot of the benefits, it's really crucial to acknowledge, that there are risks involved, just like with any substance that alters our brain chemistry.
Absolutely. That's a crucial point. While microdosing is generally considered safe when it's, practiced responsibly, there are some potential risks to be aware of. And, one concern is the possibility of experiencing unwanted side effects, even with those low doses.
So even though we're talking about, sub-perceptual doses,
Yeah,
there's still a chance of experiencing, effects that aren't necessarily pleasant.
exactly. These can manifest as, things like anxiety, headaches, maybe digestive issues or even changes in your sleep patterns. It's essential to listen to your body and adjust your dosage or protocol accordingly.
And being mindful of, like, pre-existing medical conditions or medications that you're taking
Yeah,
is crucial too, because there could be, like, potential interactions there.
absolutely. It's, always wise to consult a healthcare professional if you have any concerns.
Yeah.
Another risk to consider is the potential for like psychological distress. While microdosing can be, beneficial for mental health, it can also like trigger or worsen underlying mental health conditions,
Okay.
especially for individuals who are, predisposed to, conditions like psychosis or bipolar disorder.
Right. So it's not a risk-free practice,
Yeah.
and approaching it with, like, caution and self-awareness is essential.
Precisely. And it's also worth remembering that, the long-term effects of microdosing are still largely unknown.
Hmm.
We're just beginning to really grasp the potential impact of like regular long-term use on the brain and body.
Right. It's a journey of exploration and discovery, but one that requires responsibility
Yes,
and a willingness to, like, stay informed as new research emerges.
absolutely. Now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the future of microdosing. What are some like emerging trends and developments that we're seeing in this like rapidly evolving field?
Well, one trend that's really gaining momentum is the increasing interest in, like, microdosing retreats
Mm-hmm.
and guided experiences. People are seeking out these, like, structured environments,
Yeah.
and expert guidance to kind of support their microdosing journey.
That's fascinating. It speaks to like a desire for like a more intentional and supportive approach to microdosing, you know, like moving beyond that, like self-experimentation.
Right. It's creating that space for community and connection, like a shared experience that can kind of enhance, the healing and transformative potential of microdosing.
Absolutely. Another trend is like the rise of microdosing coaches.
Okay.
So these are individuals who are providing, personalized support and guidance
Okay.
to help people navigate all the like complexities of microdosing.
So it's like having a trusted guide to kind of accompany you on this journey of exploration and discovery.
Exactly. Microdosing coaches can offer like, valuable insights, personalized protocols, and support with, that crucial integration work. And we can't forget about, the ongoing research in this field.
Yeah.
There's like a growing body of, scientific inquiry that's exploring, the mechanisms and potential applications of microdosing.
And as the stigma surrounding psychedelics kind of continues to fade, more funding and resources are being directed toward research, which is leading to, a deeper understanding of how microdosing works and the conditions it might, benefit.
That's right. It's a really exciting time to be following this field. There's so much potential for growth and discovery.
Yeah, absolutely. And as research expands, we're likely to see like even more, innovative applications of microdosing in health, well-being, and human potential.
Absolutely. Now, let's address those ethical considerations surrounding microdosing. We talked about this, a bit earlier in terms of like indigenous knowledge and practices, but what other ethical dilemmas do we need to be kind of mindful of?
Yeah, that's a really important question. As microdosing gains popularity, we need to be, vigilant about like potential exploitation.
Yeah.
Some companies or individuals might try to like capitalize on this trend without prioritizing, the safety, ethical sourcing, or the well-being of users.
Yeah, you're right. It's crucial to be discerning and to support, companies and practitioners who, align with our values and prioritize ethical practices.
Absolutely. And, another ethical concern is the potential for microdosing to be misused as like a performance enhancer
Mm.
or a quick fix for like deep-seated issues.
Yeah, that's a valid point. It's vital to remember that microdosing is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for, good or ill.
It's about approaching microdosing with like, intention, mindfulness, and a commitment to like personal growth, not seeking a quick fix or an advantage over others.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk a little bit about like the challenges and limitations of like the current research on microdosing. Why is it so difficult to like conduct rigorous scientific studies in this area?
Yeah, it seems like kind of a catch-22, right?
Yeah.
We need more research to really understand,
Yeah.
it's kind of incredible to think about, like, the ripple effects microdosing could have on society as a whole.
Yeah.
Like, what if we could tap into this collective wellspring of, creativity, empathy, and connection? It's almost like glimpsing, like, a more harmonious future.
Yeah, it's a beautiful vision and one that, microdosing might help us realize, but, as with any emerging field, we need to proceed with like, a balanced perspective, acknowledging both, like the potential and the unknowns.
Absolutely. It's not about viewing microdosing as, like, a cure-all
Right.
or a replacement for traditional therapies or, even just healthy lifestyle choices.
Exactly. It's about, like you said, integrating it into like a broader approach to well-being, recognizing that it's one tool among many.
Yeah, and as we, kind of continue to learn and evolve our understanding of microdosing, it's crucial to have, these open and honest conversations about, like, its implications, for different aspects of society beyond just, personal health.
Right.
Like, what about the potential role of microdosing in areas like, education or business or even politics?
Yeah.
Could it, like, reshape how we approach, things like learning
Mm-hmm.
or innovation and leadership?
It's fascinating to contemplate. Imagine like classrooms where students are like, supported in exploring their creative potential.
Right.
Or, boardrooms where collaboration and innovation, kind of flow more freely. It's almost like opening like a Pandora's box of possibilities.
Yeah. And while those scenarios might seem kind of futuristic, it's not inconceivable that microdosing could actually play a role in, shaping the future of these fields.
Yeah, I agree.
But, as with any powerful tool,
Mm-hmm.
we need to consider, like, the ethical implications. So, like, how do we ensure, responsible and ethical use of microdosing in these contexts?
That's a really crucial question. Open dialogues, clear guidelines, and really prioritizing like safety and well-being. Those are paramount. We need to navigate these uncharted waters really thoughtfully and collaboratively.
Yeah, it's about approaching microdosing with this, like, deep sense of responsibility
Mm-hmm.
and respect for, its potential impact on individuals, but also, society as a whole.
Absolutely. And recognizing that, like any substance that can alter our brain chemistry, there's potential for misuse or abuse.
Right.
We need to be mindful of that.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about, like, the broader societal shifts that are kind of needed for microdosing to be you know more widely accepted
Mm.
and integrated. We've talked about that lingering stigma around psychedelics, but what other barriers do we need to overcome?
Well, education and understanding are key. A lot of people still hold these like outdated perceptions of psychedelics,
Yeah.
that are based on like, misconceptions or
Mhm.
like the counterculture movement of the past. It's about moving beyond those stereotypes
Yeah.
and embracing a more nuanced and informed perspective.
It's about shifting the narrative from, like, fear and misunderstanding to curiosity and open-mindedness.
Exactly. And another barrier is just like, the fear of the unknown. Microdosing is a relatively new phenomenon.
Yeah.
And we still don't fully understand, like, the long-term effects and how it impacts, different individuals.
Yeah, it's natural for people to be hesitant about something unfamiliar,
Mm.
especially, when it comes to something as powerful as psychedelics. But,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully, as research progresses
Right.
and as more people share their experiences, hopefully that fear will kind of diminish.
Yeah, I think open sharing and like honest conversations, are so crucial to normalizing the conversation around microdosing.
Absolutely. And ultimately comes down to personal responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Individuals need to be empowered to make those informed choices
Right.
and approach microdosing with a sense of responsibility and self-awareness.
Here are some things to kind of keep in mind. Microdosing is a personal choice, and it's not for everyone. It's essential to respect individual decisions and boundaries. If you're struggling with mental health issues, seeking guidance from a qualified healthcare professional is paramount. Microdosing is not a substitute for professional help. Approach microdosing with caution and mindfulness, starting with, a low dose, paying attention to your body's signals and
Yeah.
adjusting your protocol as needed. And, embrace microdosing as a journey of self-discovery.
Mm.
Be patient, be curious, and be open to unexpected outcomes.
Those are such excellent points. It's about honoring that individual journey and making choices that align with your own values and well-being.
Exactly. And remembering that microdosing is just one piece of the puzzle when it comes to, living a fulfilling and meaningful life.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about, like, resources and support systems for those who are, kind of interested in exploring microdosing. Like, where can they find, reliable information, connect with others, find guidance?
Well, there's, a wealth of online resources,
Hmm.
websites, forums, social media groups, all dedicated to microdosing
Okay.
that offer like, valuable information, shared experiences, and a sense of community.
It's amazing how, like, technology can connect people with shared interests and kind of create, these virtual communities.
Yeah.
And, there are also, like, microdosing coaches
Yes,
and practitioners who, can provide that personalized guidance and support.
that's right. These individuals can be invaluable in helping people, navigate those complexities, develop personalized protocols, and support them with that crucial intervention work.
And it's important not to, like, underestimate the power of, like, real life connections.
Yeah.
Like, microdosing meetups and workshops
Mm-hmm.
are springing up in cities all over the world.
Yeah.
And they offer, like, these spaces for shared learning, connection, and support.
Building a community around this practice can be really empowering, like a network of individuals who are all, exploring this new frontier in well-being together.
Yeah, it's a testament to the growing interest in microdosing and the desire to, connect and learn from one another.
Absolutely. And as the movement gains momentum, we'll likely see even more resources and support systems emerging to kind of meet, the evolving needs of individuals and communities.
It's truly an exciting time to be part of this wave of exploration and discovery.
It is.
We're witnessing this paradigm shift in our understanding of health, well-being, and human potential. And as we conclude this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with this thought. Microdosing is more than just like a practice. It's a movement.
Hmm.
It's a movement toward greater self-awareness, deeper connection, and a more expansive vision of what's possible.
Beautifully said. It's a movement that challenges the status quo and invites us to explore, these new frontiers in health, well-being, and human potential.
And it's a movement that's just getting started.
So let's, keep exploring,
Yes.
keep learning, keep supporting each other on this incredible journey.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of microdosing. We hope you found it, informative and insightful.
Yeah, and we'd love to hear your thoughts and questions and even your own experiences, with microdosing in the comments below.
Yeah, share what resonated with you the most. And until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.